Hi, hello, hello. This video is very, very late. We're going to be looking at the anime way back in winter 2020. That is stuff that aired from January to April. But because it's so late, there's been a whole other season since then, so we're going to take a look at some stuff from spring too. So we'll start, as is tradition, with the things I didn't watch and why. In winter, I didn't watch Hanako-kun, the one about the toilet spirit and the naive girl and trying to get him to help her out. I watched the first episode. It seemed fun. I liked the premise. I liked the characters. I liked the general aesthetic. But the production was kind of meh. I remember especially the big climactic battle of the first episode, which should be like the highest budget moment of the entire series. It's the first episode and it's the big fight scene, and it was just resoundingly meh. And I lost all kind of motivation or enthusiasm for watching the show. So I think at some point I'll just want to read the manga. It seemed like a fun time, but I don't know. The show just didn't captivate me. I don't remember what the show is actually called. The girl in the isekai that just maxes out her defense. I heard from a few people that this is good, and it's good in the way that I actually like isekai, where it becomes like very kind of slow and slice of lifey, and not overly dramatic, and not like a harem. That it's just straight up she's playing a video game and talking about what it's like to play that video game. It's not like she's trapped in the video game or got trucked to another dimension or whatever. So all of that made me kind of want to watch it. People compared it to I've been fighting slimes for 300 years and maxed out my level, which is like my favorite isekai series, one of the very few isekai series I actually like. I think it's getting an anime soon too. So I had a few reasons to want to watch this. I just didn't get around to it. Let me know. Do you also think it's good? Maybe I'll watch it at some point. Seems like it could be pretty comfy. And Interspecies Reviewers, this was, of course, the big meme show of winter 2020. Somehow I managed to escape watching it. A lot of my friends did. They had conversations which alarmed and disgusted me and made me wonder how it managed to get on TV. And I'll admit, it piqued my curiosity. I kind of wanted to know what the hell is actually going on in this show, but somehow I resisted. Somehow I found better things to do than watch Interspecies Reviewers. So yeah, the stuff I did watch though, let's get into some real show discussion. Starting off with a very, very easy one. This is Koisuru Asteroid. It's cute girls doing educational things, animated by one of my favorite studios lately, Dogakobo. Plus, the thing that they're learning about leads to all of these really beautiful and tranquil moments out in nature that are so charmingly and enchantingly animated. And there's extremely strong Yuri vibes in this series. So that's an easy 10, right? We're just gonna give this a 10. We're done here. Let's go home. No, but it's a little more subtle than that. There's some more stuff going on. One thing that I was really impressed by. So the premise of this series is there's these girls that met as kids and then they meet again in high school. They both share this love of astronomy that they sort of sparked in one another as when they first met in children. And their goal is to join the astronomy club. But oh no, the astronomy club has merged with the geology club as a general earth sciences club. And at first this leads to maybe a bit of tension, a bit of conflict, but very quickly everyone just starts getting along. And they kind of serves as an entry point that the astronomy people start learning more about the splendor of the earth, and vice versa. The gem seekers look up into the jewels of the sky. It's beautiful and it's wonderful, and the kind of commonality of themes that they find, as well as the little contrasts and stuff, the kind of astronomical connections they make in terms of long duration and grandness, and I don't know, it's beautiful. I really like this kind of theming, and the way that some of the larger developments in the plot, a lot of the larger character themes and stuff are reflected in the lessons they're learning about the subject matter is quite exquisite. That's just good writing right there. Um, and the fact that there are larger developments at all, even though this is a very standard cute girls doing cute things slice of life without really thrilling plot lines or anything. They break outside the mold quite a bit by having actual major developments in the characters' lives, time actually passing through the series. You know, I guess this is kind of spoilers, but like characters graduate and leave at some point, and new characters come in as kohai, as new characters in the series. And it really reflects like the grander ambitions of these characters, looking at their lives as a whole, taking one slice of it, sure, but not trapping it as perpetual and unchanging, but looking at these larger, grander dynamics. It's really rich. It's really invigorating almost at times to think about the overall course of someone's life. And it's inspiring. Yeah, it's beyond just endearing. It's beyond what you get from normal slice of life. But you actually are excited to see these characters go through all the phases of their lives. And you feel compelled and convinced that it'll be done justice. It won't just be, you know, kind of a trite plot point, forced drama sort of thing. And all of the things I'm talking about here, all of those things I just praised it for, the dynamicism, the realness of the scales of life and stuff, really, really remind me of Hidamari Sketch. This is something that I always regarded as very special about Hidamari Sketch among slice of life shows, is their willingness to show changes in people's lives, their willingness to advance time forward. And it's no surprise, because the big reason that I was so interested in the series to begin with is because of this doujinshi artist known as Kuro, or Black River, who started out their kind of manga career by making Hidamari Sketch doujins, which I thought were really, really well done. They really showed a very nuanced understanding of the characters and the series, and these kind of appealing parts of the series that they've now recreated in their own original manga. And can I tell you, it is so beautiful to have read this author since some of their first doujins for years and years and years now, and then to, you know, hear that they're having this manga being serialized, hear it's getting an anime adaptation, and then on that fateful day, seeing Kuro pop up in the credits as series creator, that's so beautiful. Like, if you want to talk about the dynamicism and inspirational quality of looking at someone's life on a long scale, the existence of this series is a beautiful testament to that in the first place. I will say, though, I wish the production was a little more Hidamari sketchy. The production is great, don't get me wrong. It's really a lot of beautiful scenes and very lively animation, very cute, just this very serene glow to everything. But it is kind of by the book. And of course, the other half of what makes Hidamari Sketch so special is the Shaft production, and just how abstractly everything is built up and rendered. And I wish there was a little more of that, just so we could have like the contrast of hyper stylized, iconified representations, and then also the huge grandeur of stepping out into the night sky. And Yuru Camp, I think, is a great example of a series that had that balance, that juxtaposition in spades. But yeah, it's fantastic. Still, Koizuru Asteroid, check it out if this sort of show appeals to you. You'll learn a lot about astronomy and geology, and you'll watch some really endearing, inspirational, cute things happen. So I would give this a solid 9.5. Speaking of Yuru Camp, though, the next one we're going to talk about is Heya Camp. This is a short that's going to tide us over, hopefully, until Season 2 of Yuru Camp proper, which is starting in January of next year. I can't wait. I'm so excited. But it encapsulates everything that I loved about Yuru Camp. The charming production, as I said, those wonderful contrasts of super stylized things, and then the grandeur of nature, these sublime vistas, and the lovely, lovely soundtrack, so soothing, so meditative, so blissfully natural, with almost that naive intimacy of amateurishness that just comes through in how it's all performed. And it really does feel like just little 10-minute slices of the original Yuru Camp, and that's the highest praise that I could hope to give. When I first heard about this, I was certainly excited, but I thought it would be something very low budget. I thought, based on the title, that it would just be them in maybe the camp room having discussions about camping gear or something. And I was still excited for that, but, you know, I barely hoped that it would start to capture the appeal of the original, but it did. It really just feels like more of the original, and that's all I could have wanted. The main kind of overarching plot of Heya Camp is that there's a stamp rally going on, which is where you have a little book. There's all these spots for different locations. You go to that location, you find the stamp, and then you fill out the whole book eventually. It's usually done as like kind of a tourist type thing. Come visit all of our local famous areas, all these little stores or restaurants or scenic spots or whatever. But it was great because before, they would just kind of go camping, but now we have all of these fresh adventures, new things to look at, all sorts of excuses for going on trips. But of course, all of these activities are just as comfy as camping, all about just enjoying the sensory bliss. And stamp rallies, I think in general, are just like a really wonderful idea. They're so charming. There's such a joy and kind of enthusiasm for getting out into the world encapsulated in a stamp rally. Just this feeling of traveling from place to place and really putting together this kind of constellation of wonderful things in your area, in your mind. It inspires you to think, if I was to make a stamp rally in my own neighborhood, in my own city, where would the spots be? What kind of stamps would we have? It's nice. It's a fun thing to think about. I love it. So the biggest departure, I think, from the original Eurocamp series is where Eurocamp almost constantly had both the stories of Fuji Girl, I can't think of her name, the main character, and Shimarin, kind of both had plots going on all the time if they weren't with each other. Here, Shimarin is largely absent. Very few episodes feature her at all, and even fewer actually kind of follow her for any substantial amount of time. And it was kind of disappointing because Shimarin is one of my favorite characters. One of my favorite characters in any slice of life series. Actually, I can't even begin to explain why right now, but something about Shimarin has just always been very, very compelling to me. So I was kind of like, where's Shimarin? Why is it just these three? But really, though, I think that distance is part of what's so intriguing about that character, right? The fact that she did so much stuff on her own during Eurocamp was so unlike any other slice of life series. And this just even further kind of doubles down on it. Before we would see what she was up to separate from all the girls. But now she's so separate, we don't even see what she's up to. And I don't know, it made her feel even more powerful, even more herself. And it makes me even more excited for season 2, because we're going to go back to full-on Shimarin adventures, I certainly hope. So yeah, this show is fantastic. This is a 9. And yeah, I don't know. If you like Eurocamp, you probably already watched this. If you like Eurocamp and you somehow hadn't heard of it, then you probably already have paused this video and queued it up immediately. But if you haven't watched Eurocamp, I hope that this inspires you to check out the franchise as a whole. I think it's the perfect entry point for people unfamiliar with slice of life. That's my new feeling. If someone doesn't know anything about slice of life, but they want to learn, I'm going to show them Eurocamp. It's the new gateway show. Okay, next we're going to talk about this show Hentatsu, which probably nobody has heard of. It's a very silly, low-budget short by Tatsuki, who made Kimono Friends and Kamerikusa, both shows I'm a big fan of. So I thought I'd check it out. Basically, it's just conversations between Tatsuki and his friend, rendered in his really distinctive kind of 3D, charming, low-budget PS1 type style. They each have their own kind of semi-animalistic, demonic, anthropomorphized avatars. And then he hires a voice actor to voice the lines, but I'm pretty sure it's the character is referred to as Tatsuki, and it's just Tatsuki's own personal experiences. I think they're always making this kind of anime, conversational comedy, super low budget, where it's often just kind of improvisation between the voice actors or between the creators, and then rendered in 3D style. I remember seeing a few other ones just kind of randomly here and there. So I think it's just constantly being made. And I think Tatsuki has made a bunch of hentatsu before this, but they were just ONAs, only on the internet. They didn't air on TV. And I think in general, this genre only airs on the internet. So the fact that hentatsu had a primetime slot between two fairly popular high-budget animes is pretty surprising. They even make jokes about that during the show. That's like, can you imagine someone just watched, I don't remember what the shows are, but let's say like Attack on Titan, and then they watch this while they're waiting for like, I don't know, the Shokugeki no Shoga to start or something like. It is quite silly. The production is quite non-existent. They just sit around and talk. But occasionally they'll make jokes that go full Tatsuki, and there'll be like a gigantic action sequence for almost no reason. That's very, very in line with the sort of action sequences in Kemono Friends and Kamirikusa. And I don't know, just this eagerness for him to poke fun at his own idiosyncrasies. Why did I write this word when I can't pronounce it? Idiosyncrasies? Idiosyncrasies? You know the word I mean, it's right there. But it's kind of mysterious, right? It's like, how self-aware is Tatsuki? Why does he keep making all of these weird shows? Why does he have this compulsion to add the elements that we see in common to Kemono Friends and Kamirikusa? Those questions are mysterious enough without realizing that Tatsuki is like kind of aware of these patterns and is like referencing them himself in these comedic shows. I don't know. It's very, very strange. Makes me really excited to see what other projects he has coming up. He kind of hints at one near the end of this. Occasionally, the production will kind of break medium. Instead of the 3D stuff, there'll be drawings that get inserted. Those are really fun. They still have the same kind of sketchy improvisational energy, though, like literally sketchy. Like they're just stuff they scribbled out on a napkin. The humor is mostly just observational. It's Tatsuki talking about his own experiences and his friend kind of riffing on him with them. But there's a huge range in kind of how deep these observations go. There's universal experiences that we all partake in, to those that are just common among like anime otaku in general, people who produce anime, and then just even things that are inside jokes between the two of them. And you can't be expected to get all of them, but when they outpace your knowledge, you can really have a fun time inferring from context, kind of like what their lifestyles must be. And it opens up just this really fascinating depth to try to picture what is it to live as Tatsuki? What kind of experiences does he have? You know, going to Comiket, making anime, meeting with production staff, going on the internet, reading receptions to his work, spending time with his friends, bumming around Nakano Broadway and Akihabara. All these things are revealed only through the jokes and the banter. And yet you get quite a rich portrait of what his life must be like. And yeah, it just makes me really happy that stuff like this is being made, that somehow it winds up on actual television, when it's so personal, so niche, so kind of inside among people who already like this sort of stuff. So it's nice. Here you can see, this is the Tatsuki avatar, this is the avatar of his friend. And the show is mostly just this. They're sitting around, chatting and gesturing and stuff. So I give this one an 8. So just a nice solid show. All right. Now it's time for a tricky one. Magia Record. We'll start with some things that I liked. Then we'll talk about some stuff I didn't like. And then we'll try to really break down where the show went wrong. So first off, I really, really like the Shaft production. This is a Shaft anime, and it's one of the few Shaft anime we probably are going to have left in our lives, that really feels like it has all of that Shaft quality. You got that bold, dynamic shot composition, not just thinking of the first thing that'll put all the characters on screen, but making it look cinematic and exciting. You got free travel in and out of the imagination space, that if a character starts talking about something or thinking about something, it's not just said, you're there. You see it. There's diagrams, there's little breaks of medium and stuff. Just love it. The story moods bleed into the aesthetics that then permeate every aspect of production. The backgrounds will change, the sort of cutaways will change, the rhythm of the shots will change, all based on the emotional mood that they're trying to generate with the story. This is stuff that a lot of studios try, but I don't think anybody's better at it than Shaft. Shaft just allows this full freedom in composing everything about their anime. that everything bleeds in and out of each other. It's so beautiful, so inspirational. And then beyond that, it's not just the normal Shaft mode, but it's the Madoka mode, which is something very, very unique to Madoka as a series that I think almost more than anything else made Madoka this iconic classic that will be talked about in anime circles for decades to come. The music, the mixed media constructions, especially in the witch labyrinths, the fantastical environments through which the action scenes take place, it still felt like Madoka. On that surface aesthetic level, it felt like Madoka, and experiencing that like 9 years after Madoka aired, seeing new content in this mode was really thrilling, was really captivating. I cannot deny that. There's this mix of really warm nostalgia, going back to such an impact that original show had on me, but also this exciting freshness that this was new Madoka. These weren't just rewatching old episodes, but brand new characters, brand new adventures, things I didn't know. But then, of course, even more disappointing than anything else was being so locked into that mode, feeling so invested and excited, and then just getting so disoriented, so disappointed, not understanding why they were making the story choices they were. But now I understand why. We'll get into that. The designs were mostly good for the new characters. They still had that Aoki Ume kind of cuteness to them, but they really can't measure up to how iconic the originals were. And some elements of the plot development were pretty compelling. Like, I liked when they would kind of play off what we knew in the original. Sometimes I would be able to read a plot point coming because I understood the lore of how the Madoka universe works. Sometimes in kind of subtle ways that I was like, oh, this is going to lead to that, and get this nice ooh kind of feeling. And I still felt emotionally connected to the characters. I think just because the designs were so good and the voice acting was really good, even though they weren't anywhere near as kind of iconic and memorable as the original Madoka characters, I wanted them to be. I felt like they could be when I first met them. Okay, let's talk about things I disliked. The plot is just way too convoluted. I felt so disoriented so often. Nothing feels like it lands with significance. You generally just have no idea what's going on. They have like what seems to be a big climactic scene, and you're just kind of like, huh? Like, who is that supposed to be? Was that good? Was that the bad guy? Was that an upset? Was that character supposed to be strong? Was that character supposed to be weak? Is this like a heartfelt reunion? Is this a harbinger of worse things to come? Like, nothing had emotional significance because things were too convoluted. You never understood what was supposed to be a major moment versus just plot advancement. And most of the time, when there was interplay with the lore of the original, sometimes you got that kind of like ooh feeling. But most of the times, it was just like, huh, like what? This doesn't make sense. Like, are you deliberately subverting things that we knew about the original, or have you just retconned it? Have you forgotten? Are we supposed to care? Are we supposed to interpret this as being, kind of a plot hook, or is it just a loose plot thread? It's stupid. It just felt like everything was kind of stupid, and that you were so confused. And then when you finally have the revelation, you just go like, oh, it's just that, huh? It doesn't mean anything more. The major kind of plot device was that there's like rumors. A rumor is spreading about some sort of urban legend or something, and witches or witch-like entities or other magical girls, of course, end up being behind it. But it was a little more complex. It wasn't just kind of like show up and fight the witch. They had to like fulfill the conditions of the rumor. I thought that was kind of cool. That was interesting. Sometimes a little spooky, a little haunting, and it had a nice episodic structure that, they'd find out about this, they'd investigate, there'd be kind of a climactic battle. They'd learn a lesson. Probably some characters would reconcile or something. But this episodicness, the fact that they tried to make it nicely tight and bundled like that, undermined any attempt to kind of understand the greater significance of things. That you would have these characters introduced, you would be throwing all these motivations for them, and then they would kind of try to have it both ways, where they would try to resolve a bunch of stuff to make it a nice episodic adventure, but then like kind of leave things dangling and mysterious. But then by the end, you're just kind of like, well, what was the point of that? Like, I don't really care about these characters yet. I don't feel that invested in their big emotional payoff. And yet we're being asked to, like, wonder, like, what could this mean? I don't know. Just the timeline was so confusing. So many characters had so many different relevant times. You know, like, a character will be introduced, and then you'll find out they were involved with, like, this group of characters and this group of characters at two separate occasions. They had two separate disastrous incidents happen before you even met them. You learn about one, and then you learn about the other, but then it's like really muddled to try to figure out, like, kind of the character arc and the character growth, because it's just this, like, constant undermining of the significance of what they've already shown you. It's frustrating. You look at the medical plot, and it's so much cleaner than this. It's so clear when, like, a twist lands. It's so clear when something has been set up to you, and then it's a lie. It's not just this constant muddled, oh, but whoa, oh, whoa. I don't know. I'm getting a little frustrated. It's hard to articulate exactly what's wrong with it, but I hope at least my frustration is coming across, that I was very disappointed in this show. Here's the other big problem. Oh, never mind. I have another point. So many mysteries of character perception, but we simply cannot know. So many kind of dramatic moments, and sometimes even entire episode plots, are based on, like, character A doesn't understand the motivation of character B. Character A is, like, suspicious of character B for whatever reason. Or character A has, like, a secret motivation that character B doesn't understand, and they're kind of at odds. But we don't know any of these characters. We don't understand anything that's going on. So we just don't, we can't invest ourselves in any of these plots, because it's just characters suddenly in conflict for, like, no reason. And here's the big problem that exacerbates all of these things, that I think really, if it wasn't for this, if we just tried to fit in all of our plots and all of our character development around, like, 5 characters, it could have been so much better. But there's too many characters. Way, way, way too many characters. I think there's, like, 30 characters. I'm not even kidding. I think this show has, like, 30 magical girls running around in it. And they're trying their darndest to create even the loosest plot thread that will tie them all together. And even worse, give them something to do. They're so unmemorable, so single note, endlessly just churning in and out of the plot, doing, like, one thing, having, like, 5 lines to try to establish who they are as a character, who they're mad at, what unresolved issues they have from the past, and then they're just shuffled off by the end of the episode to be replaced with a slew of other similar characters. Sometimes I think it's kind of hype to have a lot of characters, especially in kind of like a show that has battles or some other sort of competitive aspect to it. Exciting things like power level ambiguity. Who would win in a fight between these characters? That's exciting to think about. Seeing kind of a power scale being built up, and then someone suddenly slotting in really high up. That's hype, once you've built that up and established that. But they didn't do any of that. I didn't have any of those good feelings. All of the fights just seemed totally arbitrary. Stuff was just happening, you know? Some amount of magical girls and witches would show up. It would just be total chaos for a while, and then someone would win or lose. You never felt invested in it. You never felt like the plot was sufficiently motivating the fight, or would be sufficiently impacted by the fight. And it just, again, just the number of characters. So many times there would be a fight where a character would swoop in, show up, do something. It was unclear, like, did they actually have that big an impact? And they just swoop away again. You think, why? Like, it's just to get that character in there. It's just to show that character fighting. And really, it's the worst fate of a magical girl. You thought the worst fate of a magical girl would be to use your magical powers so much that you turn into a witch? It's just to stand around with, like, 0 to 1 thing to do. You know how lame it is to have a character that has, like, a big emotional arc that you cram into 1 episode? They have some big revelation or whatever. Then they join the gang. They're going to be hanging around all the time now, and they just don't do anything. The lessons they learned are irrelevant. The things that made them unique are irrelevant. They just kind of throw in a one-liner occasionally and spend the rest of the time sitting around with their arms crossed until the inevitable battle scene where they just endlessly swing away at witches or familiars. It's just bad. It's bad shonen writing. You compare this to a series like One Piece, and it becomes clear that they don't know how to write shonen, and yet they shoved the structure and aesthetic and concept of Madoka into a battle shonen series. An even worse fate, though. I'm just kidding. There's an even worse fate. The fact that the original cast shows up, I guess this is spoilers, who gives a shit? Mami shows up, Kyoko shows up, Sayaka shows up. That's stupid. Why? Why? That's so disrespectful to those characters. That's so disrespectful to the voice actors to make them show up just as any of the other girls do. Pop in, fight, leave. It's stupid. It's so frustrating what they did to my beloved Madoka characters. So, why is it so bad? Okay? Like, I complained a lot just now, but like, what is really the underlying problems that led to this? I think this is a good example to kind of look at what made Madoka so successful in the first place, which, in some sense goes without saying, but in another more interesting sense is quite a subtle and nuanced question. So let's look at how Madoka was built, how it was built up. First, we had the characters, okay? Like, think about the characters of Madoka. Or rather, think about Madoka, and probably what comes to mind first is the characters. But the characters are actually kind of built on their ideologies, in that the characters aren't compelling by themselves, they're compelling based on what they stand for. The fact that they all had very different kind of viewpoints on how to live life and what being a magical girl meant, and sacrifice and relationships and all of these things really built up the foundation of why we cared about those characters. And the reason we were invested in that ideology was because of the emotional resonance of the show. Like, think back to your very first experience watching Madoka. Think back to those opening scenes of the first episode of Madoka running through like the witch space and things collapsing and seeing Homura fight Walpurgis Night and stuff. It was captivating on a sheer emotional level that you just needed to know what was going on. And from there, this kind of ideology of the show began to emerge, and then you found yourself really attached to the characters. And then on top of that, they could build up other stuff. The plot intrigue. Now that you care about the characters, you really care about what's going to happen to them. So when there's mysteries, when there's twists, when there's suspense, you're involved, you're invested, because you already care about the actors, the people making these plots happen. On top of that, all the way up here is finally aesthetics. Of course, Madoka has amazing aesthetics, and I think if the show's plot was absolute trash, I would probably still watch it just on the strength of the aesthetics. The fact that I watched all of Magia Record is kind of proof of that, I guess. But when you're actually looking at how you experienced Madoka, the aesthetics hit you first on the level of emotional resonance, right? Like, it's because you were so emotionally caught up in the world of the series that later you have such a strong association with these aesthetics that they're not just interesting, it becomes captivating because of the context built up around it. And then, on top of all of that, on top of all of these things that we already enjoy and that we already find compelling, is the lore. And the lore just kind of acts as this very light stitching to make all of the plot come together. Like, the lore in Madoka is quite compelling and quite interesting. The idea of Kyubey kind of being this trickster almost, and yet at the same time having this gigantic, universal, eternal perspective on the heat death of the universe and stuff. That's a pretty compelling idea. And the whole concept around, you get your powers, you get your wish, but then if you use your powers too much, you turn into a witch. You have to fight the witch, take this gem and fight the witch. It all works, it's all good, but none of it would be interesting without it motivating the plot and without it motivating all of this emotional resonance and stuff. The lore by itself can't really sustain very much. It doesn't have many ideas of its own. So this is the pyramid that I would say the original Madoka operates by. That first you just find yourself emotionally invested. Then you're interested in kind of what ideas the show is espousing. Then you're interested in the characters that are acting based on these ideas. Then you're interested in the plot that builds up around them. Then you're interested in the aesthetics that you begin to associate with that plot. And then you're interested in the actual lore and mechanics of the series that motivate the plot and are motivated by the plot, but don't really act as like a substitute for the plot. Like, let's imagine Madoka was everything besides a magical girl show, and it was just about these people living their lives, and it somehow had still the same aesthetics and stuff. The fact that you're missing out on the lore elements wouldn't really matter too much. Okay, now keep this in mind. So, because in contrast, shoot, this was supposed to be the big surprise at the end. Oh man, I'm not gonna re-record this. Shoot, I should have tested. It was supposed to show all the other tiers, and then I was gonna be like, oh, but there's actually something that's fundamental to all of these. Dang, my big surprise. Okay, anyways. So, Magia Records starts with the lore, all right? It starts with the fact that we already know the Madoka story. We already know how it works with magical girls and Kyubey and witches and stuff. And it starts with things that are compelling only in the context of the lore. Oh, there's this place where magical girls can be saved. There's a place that has tons of witches and soul gems. There's a magical girl that will help you out if your soul gem is getting corrupted. These are only interesting based on the mechanics of the lore. They're not interesting in terms of ideology. They're not interesting in terms of characters. They're not interesting plots in and of itself. It's only if you're very invested in the Madoka lore and you want to learn more about the implications and ramifications of these new lore scenarios that you're going to get invested. So already that's like a big inversion. On top of that, we have aesthetics that, as I said, the only reason I'm watching the show is because it looks and feels like Madoka. And they lean into that too. They make this kind of like buffet of Madoka aesthetics that sometimes even feels excessive. There's just so many witches, so many magical girls, so many attacks, so many transformations. It feels like such overkill because they know the aesthetics are something that they can bank on. The aesthetics are something that they can build the rest of the show on top of that. Next comes the plot intrigue, if you can call it that, that they just keep throwing these little episodic adventures at you. And only after all of that finally comes the characters, whom we have no real reason to care about outside of the fact that they're a vehicle for all of this stuff. And as an afterthought, after all of this, maybe there's some emotional resonance. If you've managed to care about the characters, maybe you begin to care about what they're going through. But it's backwards, right? You see what I'm saying? You have to be attached to the characters for your own kind of otaku waifu type reasons, and then maybe you'll care what happens to them. It's not like Madoka where you're just caught up in the excitement of the story, of the drama of it in and of itself, and then eventually you find yourself attached to the characters. I don't know if I can articulate this very well. But my big dramatic point was like, why would they build it like this? Why would it be set up this way? And the answer is, of course, Mobage. That this is based on a Mobage. They made a Madoka Magia Record mobile game where you have a team of magical girls and you fight witches and you roll gacha to get more magical girls and you do events and you power them up and level them up and they transform and all this stuff. This money-making scheme that they've dumped on everyone's phones, that's really what motivates the show. So that's why the lore is so important, because the lore is actually like game mechanics. That's why the aesthetics are so important, because that's what distinguishes this game from millions of other Mobage with the exact same mechanics. That's why the plot is the way it is. Like, oh, and ideology. Ideology is such an afterthought that I didn't even think of this. The show does not have a concrete ideology as far as I can tell. The only ideology is about the lore. They debate the ethics of various in-lore things that don't exist in the real world. You know, what is the right way to exterminate witches? What is the way that a magical girl society should be raised? Should we nurture witches or not? And you can extrapolate this into like greater questions of morality, I guess, but it's not very interesting to do so because it is so occupied with the lore mechanics of the universe itself, and not like Madoka was with greater questions of just what does it mean to be a person, what does it mean to sacrifice for one another, what does it mean to be a good friend. Magia Record. Yeah, the Mobage Origins explains a whole lot of flaws that this show has, like the spam of characters, the fact that it's just kind of event after event after event, the fact that everybody keeps transforming into these stupid, over-designed forms that are obviously like the SSRs or whatever. And it's kind of fun, honestly, to extrapolate some game mechanics from these plot elements. I think that's something that is kind of neat to do with random Mobage shows, but it's also kind of sickening to do that with Madoka. Madoka is kind of special to me. It really disrespects all of the best qualities of the original. The fact that they made this Mobage and the fact that they trotted it out as a new show, as if it was at all similar. Madoka, was mysterious. There was such this small intimacy in the plot, the heaviness and the impact of every single development, and the deep, deep moral heart, the fact that it really seemed to be teaching you some lessons about the human condition and who you were and what you wanted to be. All of that, just, I gotta say though, this is grim, but this feels like a fitting into Shaft. Not in that it's a final representative masterpiece, but this kind of resignation of, I would rather the studio just board up now. Like, they're not going to make anything good again. Right now, Shaft's only announced projects are a Strike Witches spinoff and a Strike Witches ripoff. And, I like Strike Witches, I'll admit it, but this was supposed to be Shaft. This is the studio of Hidamari Sketch and Madoka and the Monogatari series and friggin' Sayonara Zetsuba Sensei and even Sangatsu no Lion. This is where it ends after 40 years. So, that's it, I guess. But anime itself will never ever die, and I can't wait to talk about the next show. So we'll give this one, I don't know what you're expecting. The way I talked about it near the end, you would think like a 0 or a 2. But I actually give it a 6.5. Because the strength of the aesthetics is so powerful. The fact that this still looks like an Aoki Ume character design makes me want to watch it. Makes me still care, despite myself. Despite the fact that I think it's an abomination that it exists at all. I can't help it. It still feels like Madoka a little bit. I chose the screenshot because the Ebi Mayo is 690 yen, and the Pitan is 420 yen. And I was like, is that a coincidence? 69, 420? Is that a joke? Is that intentional? I don't know. I noticed it while I was watching it. I haven't seen anyone else notice it yet. What's up with that? This is the most entertaining part of the show. What's up with these prices? Okay. Next! Aizoken! Keep your hands off Aizoken! Oh man! Another masterpiece from Yuasa. It's... How in the world did Yuasa make Devilman Crybaby and then this, back to back? The shows could not be more different, and yet they're both so excellent. Aizoken especially. Oh man, I love this show. If you know anything about my tastes, at this point, if you're watching this video or watching this channel, you probably have a general kind of sense about what I like in anime. You know that I love this one. You just know it. From the very, very first second, where it was we were following Asakusa run around the new town that she moved into, and then it seamlessly goes into her imagination space of the drawings she makes, of seeing the drawings move around of her in the town. I was just completely enthralled, and like, it's really gonna be like this, huh? Like, it's I didn't know much about it going in. I just knew that it was a Yuasa show, that it was very well regarded, and the joy I felt when I realized what kind of show it was going to be. And by the end of the first episode, that finale where they're flying around in their imagined little aircraft, the soundtrack that just felt so instantly iconic, that I knew they would keep using it throughout the show, and that by the end it was going to make me cry. The declaration of the strongest world. I was convinced. I was convinced that I would love this show and probably name it like Anime of the Year or something. And I was just not let down. I remember we watched it at my like rhythm games club, the DDR club, where normally at the end of the evening we'll just sit around and watch a bunch of new anime. And we were just in awed silence. You know, we just it's like, wow. It's really gonna be like this, huh? And I was never disappointed. From episode 2 onwards, they just kept expanding it in exciting new directions, introducing fun new characters, fully embracing like some kind of structural tropes about, you know, cultural festivals and comiket and underground shopping markets. All of these things that have always stimulated and delighted my imagination, they just went full out on in the most exciting way. That's so good. I had intended to make like a ton of slides about this show. You know, have a slide about like characterization, a slide about using the imaginatory space in anime. You know, the blending of the real and the imagined and how that's depicted. A slide about, you know, following your dreams and what it means to be passionate and what it means to grow as an artist and what it means to sacrifice for your art. A slide about how beautiful it is in so many animes. Often my favorite scene is seeing someone succeed at a creative project, and then how well done it was here, and how I was able to kind of tap further in to what makes that scene so good to me in so many different shows like Shirobako and New Game and Romance is a Bonus Book for a K-drama example. Some loud ass motorcycle outside or something. I don't know what their problem is. Just trying to talk about anime in here, you know? Anyways. But like, I can make all those slides. It would just be gushing. It would just be going on and on about how good it is. It feels kind of unnecessary. And we got a lot of other shows to talk about, so what can I say? Everything is good. The animation, the setting, the plot, the emotions. It's a masterpiece. This is a 10. I didn't even load the thing properly. We're missing some animations in these slides, but it's a 10. There's no way it's not. Okay, let's move on to the spring season. Things I didn't watch. It's quite a few. Kaguya-sama Season 2. I know the anime is quite well done, but I read the manga, so it seems kind of unnecessary. Tower of God, I've heard, is really good. It's one of like the highest rated shonen series on Mangadex. So I am quite interested in it. I think if I was to pick up a shonen, it would be up there in terms of ones I'm curious about. But I don't have really any interest in watching the anime. I'd rather just read the manga or manhwa or whatever. I think it's Korean. Yesterday, Tate, Sing Yesterday for me or whatever. I wanted to watch this because it's a Doga Kobo show. And they were doing kind of something more serious and somber and adult, which sounded quite interesting. I watched like the first couple episodes and it didn't really grip me. I just wasn't really in the mood for it. But I've heard it's quite good. A friend of mine ended up just reading the manga because he said the anime was moving too slowly. And he said it was quite good, so maybe I'll just read the manga. But I do like Doga Kobo production. I don't know. I'll probably get to it at some point. Arte, whatever, Arte, which is about the woman in Renaissance times who wants to be like an apprentice artist, even though she comes from like this noble background, and it's seen as like men's work and stuff. And she meets up with this kind of outcast artist. Anyways, it's quite interesting. The setting is very unique. I was excited to learn about like more of this world and what art was like at the time. But the anime production quality was just quite meh. You know, it has to be like up to a certain level that it doesn't just kind of exhaust me trying to watch kind of bad animated anime. So again, I think I'd rather just read the manga because the manga is quite well regarded and probably is a lot more like sakuga. I don't know if sakuga can be the term anymore, but you know what I mean. Tamayomi, if you remember, we were talking about because the artist of the manga had made some really, really weird doujinshi. And I was very curious if Tamayomi would have any of this weirdness in it. If it would somehow reflect something strange going on with this artist. And I am still a little curious about that, but I didn't end up watching it. I just didn't get to it. and I didn't hear from anyone who was watching it that like, whoa, it gets weird or like there's bizarre characters or something like that. So I think it's just kind of normal. And it makes sense because like it's the big kind of mainstream series by this person, and you know it's about baseball. Like it has enough subject matter to go on without it having to be strange in any way. So I think they just made a normal manga, and it doesn't have anything about their Lucky Star Dojinshi or any of their other strange things from uh, whatever that series is called. It's not called Tamayuri, but it's something Yuri. Anyways, so I don't know. Someone tells me it's weird, I'll watch it, but I don't think it is. Here's some stuff I did watch, but the season was really weird. Only one show I was watching actually aired to completion. Other ones, because of COVID, had to stop production midway. Like this one, Hokago Taibo Nishi. It's like the diary of the Breakwater Club. It's the Dogakobo fishing show. You know, I was really, really enjoying this one. I love Dogakobo. I love fishing stuff. I love any sort of educational, hobby-based anime. It had lively animations, some idyllic settings, fun friendships, educational and passionate about a hobby. Really everything that I liked about Koizuru Asteroid and that I was praising about that. I just hope that Dogakobo just keeps doing this. Find another hobby-based slice-of-life manga, make a great animated series about it. I would watch these forever. They're just so soothing, so educational, so cute, so fun, so funny. Not even that funny, but funny enough. What I was especially impressed by this one is that they got into the guts of it. They actually showed what it's like to prepare the fish and the other marine life that they catch. So if you're squeamish, be a little careful. You get to see some fish getting gutted and stuff. But I find that stuff really interesting. Like, I'll watch that stuff on YouTube. Just because I feel like, I don't know. Well, this is a big tangent. I don't know if I can explain it very well. But it feels like once I watch that stuff, I appreciate the food a little better. I know for some people it's the opposite, that if they watch it, then they can't eat it because they can't dissociate it from being alive. But it feels like I kind of respect the process more if I see the guts of it, if I see the full process from catch to plate. But anyways, that's just a matter of taste. But it was surprising. Like I didn't think a show would animate something like that. It felt, because there are people that are squeamish about it, I was surprised that they did it. Anyways, but yeah, don't lose hope. Sometime later this July, sometime later this month, it's going to continue again. Picking up from episode like 4, I think it got to, before it finished. So looking forward to that. I don't know when exactly it is, but hooray, hooray, we'll go fishing again. Gal and Dinosaur, another one that I was really, really enjoying. Something my friend found this manga quite a while ago. We all started reading it. It was a good laugh. He even ordered the volumes from Japan. Just this kind of flurry of fandom, everyone getting worked up about this bizarre, silly, in many ways kind of amateurish Dinosaur and Gal manga. And then it got this amazing adaptation, just a phenomenal adaptation. You got this awesome blend of media and animation styles, live action stuff, CGI stuff, all manner of genre and mood were encapsulated in all these different little sketches. And any assumption you made about where it was going, what it could do or couldn't do, was just routinely obliterated. They just kept subverting themselves and pushing further in all sorts of crazy directions. Basically, everything that I liked about the Pop Team Epic anime was here as well, which isn't a surprise because it's the same studio. I really hope that Kamikaze Doga just keeps doing this. Find a cult comedy manga, make this amazing collage of mixed media representations of it, and just throw it out there into the world for all the normies and even otaku to feel baffled by. And yeah, despite all the chaos of the show, despite the Pop Team epicness of it, a lot of what really was charming about the manga comes through the lovely, lovable everyday life of a gal and her dinosaur. You know, it still had that serenity. It still had that domestic peacefulness, despite the fact that sometimes it would just cut to live action, or it would force you to deal with the existential questions of the dinosaur having merch of himself. Yeah, it was it was quite beautiful in that regard. I don't know how they managed to pull that off. I really, really want to see what happens with the plot. There is actually like a plot, not just to the manga, which is about the Dallin dinosaur living their lives, but to this adaptation, there seems to be some sort of time travel Death Note thing happening. I'm not kidding. So I'm really curious to see what happens there. Hopefully we won't have to wait too long, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything about the continuation being announced. I don't know when it'll start up again. Someday, hopefully, eventually. We'll see. All right, let's talk about the one show I watched that actually aired to completion, which is Kakushi Goto. It was a good one, though. I think very, very happy that it was the one that made it through, at least. It's another series by the author of the mangaka for Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei, and it has everything that you'd want from that series. All the demented mania, the puns, the misunderstandings, the overloading of examples that they make one kind of observational joke and a whole list just floods by the screen. We have these characters that are just outside the edge of reasonability, that they can always act as like the straight man foil for one another, but when you actually kind of focus in on them and let them have some agency, you realize that almost all of them are quite deranged as well. The central secret of the plotline, which is that the main character is a mangaka, but he draws really goofy, perverted gag manga with lots of fan service and stuff. And he doesn't want his young daughter to know. His daughter's like in primary school, and he thinks that she'll lose all respect for him, that she won't understand it, that she'll get made fun of. So it's this constant war to try to keep her from finding out, him living this double life. You would think that that would kind of run dry quickly, but it consistently agitates. Really good plots. It always kind of heightens the conflict, leads to all sorts of fun misunderstandings and awkward situations. It never really feels milked, and yet it's always there. It always provides this backbone of the show. So wish that Shaft had animated it. Man, I miss Shaft. I know that I was like, all right, with Magia Record, I can just be like, Shaft is over, but I wish Shaft was here to animate it. They did do a good job, though. A lot of things that I liked about the SZS anime still carried over here. The emotional bleed into aesthetic space, the kind of manic imagination zones, very crisp but frantic animation. And sometimes they really swung for it and did some crazy kind of sakuga, like really animated, dramatic shots, but not on the level that Shaft could achieve. SZS is such a beautiful series, and it would be foolish to expect that level from, like, I don't even know what studio did this, but not Shaft. But, oh man, there are some things that make this show very, very special, even compared to SZS, like the heart. Even though it has the same relentlessly cynical attitude of SZS, it lets itself give that away in the face of love. That when you really get into the emotional plot line of him and his daughter and their late mother, or her late mother, his late wife, it's really moving and really sincerely sentimental and beautiful in that regard. Like, watch out, There's cute and heartwarming parts, sure, but I remember we watched this as like virtual club. We would watch it all together through Discord, and we would all start messaging each other. It's crying time. The crying time is coming when a certain plot line is advanced. You'll see what I mean. You'll know when you got to crying time. And it's compellingly mysterious too. These other plot lines that I'm talking about that are kind of advanced in the background each episode are really compelling. You really want to be able to piece it together. You want to know what happens to these characters. But it's very nicely balanced, that it never detracts or distracts from the comedy and all of the nice heartwarming connections, that you're fully immersed in those. You're not just instantly thinking about, oh, but what does this mean for, the backstory? What does this mean for the shots in the future and stuff? So yeah, really, really well done. Great show. Overall, I would give it an 8.5. Yeah. All right, that's it for now. It's probably one of the least anime-filled periods of my adult life, honestly, the last few months. Basically just watching Kakushi Goto and kind of randomly catching up on some old shows, but like feeling like I was generally off the seasonal anime treadmill. It might not change anytime soon. Next season is looking quite desolate. I can't imagine myself with the kind of anime watching schedule I would have had in the past of like 5 or 6 shows where I was super excited for the new episode week after week after week. Much more kind of like, meh, well, I guess I'll watch some anime if I get to it. Oh, I guess I'll watch this with some friends. Like, not the treadmill experience that I'm used to. Okay, but Great Pretender, though, we're watching this as a club right now. It's a show by Studio Wit that aired on Netflix. It's pretty fantastic. Please check that out. Studio Wit remembered what colors looked like after so many years of grimdark stuff. For the first time since Rolling Girls in 2014, they remember the colors besides brown and gray exist. Isn't that thrilling? So yeah, check that out. But I don't know. Like, that's a show that aired on Netflix. That is not a week-by-week show. It's a show that kind of aired outside of the seasonal schedule, and it's the one that's most compelling to me right now. So what does that mean? Have I stepped off that great eternal treadmill that is seasonal anime, that has had me constantly rushing forward towards the carrot of new shows, probably since Madoka, since around then, for like 10 years now almost? Just kidding. It's camping time! It's camping time! Year Camp is coming back, baby! Year Camp Season 2, January 2021! It's camping time!